2018 meeting of the City of Ann Arbor Park Advisory Commission. It is about 4:06, and we're here in council chambers. Colin, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Gallardi?
Here.
Commissioner Santa Croce?
Here.
Commissioner Morrison?
Here.
Commissioner Borgsdorf?
Here.
Commissioner Ramaswamy? Commissioner London? Commissioner Apple?
Here.
Commissioner Kraut?
Here.
Councilmember Grand? And we don't have Councilmember Crapel. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Item C, approval of the agenda. You have the agenda before you. Any changes, additions, modifications? Hearing none, we'll move on. Item D, approval of the minutes of the September 18th, 2018 PAC meeting. They are attached to your meeting materials and also posted on Legistar. Changes, additions, corrections, and if not, a motion.
I'd move to approve them.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Item E, public commentary, 3 minutes per speaker. Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item F, special presentations. F1, update on the stream bank stabilization project in Glacier Hill Parks. Henry Sheehan, did I get that right?
Harry.
Harry, oh, Harry, right. Chief Deputy, Washtenaw County Water Resources. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good
Thank you.
afternoon, everyone. I was here in May to introduce, can you hear me okay? I tried touching it and there was some thunder response. But
It goes up and down if it's, the actual podium goes up and down.
Does it really?
Yeah, there's a button.
No, that's a Bluetooth.
I've never actually had the occasion to raise it myself for obvious reasons.
Well, now we get to learn together.
Elected council member Grant can operate the lifting podium.
All right, it goes pretty high, so extra however.
Okay.
If you put it high enough, we won't be able to see you.
There's not another button that just drops people out.
No, you know, that's
That's the red one.
that button's over here.
Oh, that one's over there.
That's what you get when you're the mayor, you get that button.
Okay, so I came and introduced this project in May. This is just a very brief overview of that process and an update. That's been 5 months. We hope in 6 months that we'll be bidding out the project and have someone on board for construction. To remind you, this is Glacier Hill Park over by Green and Glacier, the King neighborhood. That's that green space there. But more importantly, for a drain commissioner or water resources commissioner, this is at the tip of a tributary of Miller Creek. So Miller Creek goes from the Georgetown neighborhood up in the north section above Plymouth Road, goes through North Campus, NCRC, and then down along Huron Parkway and empties out in Ruthven Park to the Huron River. And that arrow is essentially the project area. It's that very tip of that tributary. The tributary is where it turns into an open channel from a storm sewer. So the neighborhoods collect all the storm water for, I think, 125 acres, something like that, and it deposits it into this ravine. The ravine's kind of steep, and it wasn't designed to handle those kind of flows, so what we have is erosion. Go through a few pictures. You have bank. The banks are coming down in places, becoming more vertical. There's instability. There's trees falling in. That's probably about a 14-foot high bank there. And as the flow carves out the roots of some of these bigger trees, those trees are falling in as well. A lot of the cottonwoods right along the stream bank are falling in. Again, there's probably an average of 5-foot vertical banks throughout. And lots of debris that's been falling in, and in some places that causes the flow to go around and cause even more erosion. And there's another debris jam. There's a pipe in there that was from a pathway that was put in a long time ago. The pathway is no longer there. In 2013, because of sedimentation downstream, the city initiated a Millers Creek sediment accumulation study to look at the whole watershed and find out what the major sources of sedimentation were to try to get a handle on it. And this Reach D, this is where this Miller Creek project is, that was found to be the highest in terms of length of channel that was being eroded, the height of the banks averaging 6.3 feet up and downstream of this project, and mostly downstream of this project as well. Erosion hazard index is highest in the creek shed, and just the tonnage and the cubic foot of sedimentation and erosion and sedimentation downstream was the highest. So this is where we're starting. This is the downstream point. I hope you can see that in the top where it says, I believe it says, mine's tiny, number 3, there's that parentheses line that basically is where the creek is filling up with sediment. It's a delta, and it's difficult for the water to pass through that point when it fills up with sediment. The creek is supposed to go along the center or the outer perimeter of Ruthven Park and down to the bottom right, where it discharges to the Huron River, but there is another pathway right parallel to Huron Parkway, right adjacent to it. And the creek has jumped the channel and gone through that at least once before. So that's the level of erosion and sedimentation we're talking about.
Is that 4?
Number 4, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's the dotted line along our left.
On your left, right. It's just to the east of Huron Parkway. What we're proposing to do is create a low-flow channel that's kind of sized for the base flows that are there now, but also create a larger cross-section that can handle the 2-year event, which is about a 2¼ inch storm, without causing erosion and instability. And then revegetating with native plant species that would include perennials and woody species as well. So over time, they would establish themselves in the woods there. A couple things to note is at the north end and the south end, it's not on park property. The creek channel itself is not on park property, so we're working with 2 private property owners to obtain easements. We have no reason to believe we won't be able to get those. There are 100, the other point to note is that there are 100 trees represented by those blue dots of 6 inches in diameter or greater that are within about a 60-foot corridor, which we, on a planning level, consider that to be the area of construction impact. So those trees would be taken down. That is in the flat part of the creek where the erosion is happening. In the floodplain, the side slopes, it goes up pretty steeply on both sides, and they will be intact. This is a project similar to what we did at Leslie Park Golf Course and downstream on Mallett's Creek, although a much smaller scale. It's just a smaller tributary. And the timeline of this is that we met with the public for the first time in April. We did a 1/4 mile surrounding the project area. And I came here in May. We did a site walk in May, open to the public. And that was, we contacted via letters each immediate adjacent neighbor to the project. We're working on design and permits right now. In November, I believe it's the 2nd meeting in November at City Council, we'll pass a resolution for a drain petition so that we can move forward with financing through our office. And this fall, we will work to secure those easements, looking to bid in March. Going back one step, the financing would be for a stormwater project. This does not involve budget for parks and recreation. Summer construction and fall replanting. And that is it. And again, I just wanted to provide a real quick overview. It's just a touch base point.
Questions?
I'm curious if the reaction or interaction with the neighbors.
So then, we had that meeting, and the neighbors understood the need for the project. I mean, it was pretty obvious based on the photographs. And then we subsequently went out in the field, and you could see, there's no argument with the justification for the project. They're not happy about the level of tree removal, or just they're not looking forward to the disturbance involved with construction. We talked about the time frame, the time window of construction being generally somewhere between 2 and 4 months. They were supportive overall with protection of the creek and downstream resources, but Just like any project in your backyard, you have some hesitations about it. We will meet again once we have some 50% plans to present. We'll probably meet in January, and then as we finalize plans, we get to 90%, we'll meet as well. We'll offer up another public meeting.
And like, with that regard to sort of, if they're for it or against it, do you feel like there's been good, at least awareness of what's going on?
I'd like to see more people involved, so we'll do the same thing with the next public meeting, quarter mile, and then letters to the adjacent property owners, because I know not all of them came, and one time when we were out there, I got the, hey, what's going on down there? And I left my card and asked them to call me, and they didn't. So we'll keep doing that, because we don't want the news, the full news to get to them when the excavators arrive, that sort of thing.
We're here.
Yeah. So, and once we have the attention of some, that will help get the attention of others.
Thank you.
So how wide is from the cut across, like from where it breaks? 20 feet, 30 feet? I heard.
Currently?
What proposed?
So it would be a 10-foot base flow channel and then 2 shelves that are 10 feet. So it's 30 feet in the bottom.
30 feet, and you need 15 feet on each side, thus the 60-foot construction.
Right.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out how you got the 60.
Yeah, you get the slope, and then you have to have room for the excavator as well.
Yeah.
So just given that we're seeing more bigger flood events, could you review the sizing, like why 2.5 year or 2.5 inch?
Yeah.
Was that what you said?
Yes, the 2-year 24-hour storm is generally what is used for the bank full event, which is the channel forming event. It is the event most commonly associated with where a stream lands in terms of its size and shape. That's the event that the channel creates, this cross-section that the channel creates for itself to reach stability. This project also has a downstream culvert, which does act as a control of flow, so that as that culvert fills up and you have a larger storm or a very erratic high intensity event, it will act as a restriction, and the water will actually back up in the floodplain, reducing the velocities.
Okay.
Michael?
Does the city contribute at all to the assessment, the drain assessment for this, being that it runs through city parks?
Yeah, so this would be a drain. The petition would involve creating a county drain. That county drain would be created most likely as a 100% assessment to the city of Ann Arbor. That's the way it was programmed in the CIP.
Okay.
Paige?
Do you anticipate coming back to PAC at the completion of the project to show us what it looks like after?
Sure.
You have
That's your
to.
service.
Kind of.
So I'm curious,
Otherwise
yeah.
it's
If
half
this
the
thing
story.
we get more toys and whistles, I'm going to keep coming because it's fun.
Thanks for coming.
You bet.
Moving on, item G, new business. G1, resolution to recommend a modification of the partnership agreement between the city and Leslie Science and Nature Center.
And it's the perfect time.
Susan Westhoff,
Hi,
welcome.
thanks for having me back.
Thanks for coming back.
It's always my pleasure. I really appreciate everything you do for the parks. I'm here today to give you an update on the merger I spoke about maybe 6 months ago, and talk about where we are in that process and what the MOU is addressing. So hopefully I can go through a little bit and then you can ask questions. So as I mentioned, 6 months ago, Leslie Science and Nature Center and the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum went into a merger about 2 years ago, actually this November. We approached this merger for several reasons, but primarily we saw ourselves as colleagues and not competitors, and that together we could actually strengthen each other's work and achieve our missions more succinctly by putting together our development, our marketing, our HR, our finance, our facility staffs, and actually have a shared services model. And we've actually moved into that in the last 6 months, which is incredibly exciting. It takes a long time to make a merger happen. So we actually have shared development and marketing staff and shared HR and finance staff who service both sites and support the staff across the organization. It's really exciting for us, for Leslie in particular. As a really small nonprofit, we never had HR or finance staff and had development staff kind of hit or miss throughout the years. So that's a huge resource for us and subsequently for the park, because when people come on our property, we are receiving more and more grants, more support for our programs, and starting to be able to offer some new and unique programming at Leslie Science and Nature Center, which is incredibly exciting. Some examples of that, this past year, the Organization for Bat Conservation actually dissolved in March. That was another nonprofit in Pontiac. When they were dissolving, we were really sad. They were an interesting nonprofit doing exciting educational programs, and we swiftly reached out to them and said, what's happening to your amazing educational programs that teach people about bats and about nocturnal creatures? And because we were larger and stronger with hands-on, we were actually able to take on some of their animals and their entire set of programming, and just started offering them in September. And that's simply something we never would have been strong enough to do on our own. So that was incredibly exciting for us, and certainly something that'll be new for the parks and for people in the Ann Arbor community as we're able to offer programming around bats and nocturnal animals at our site. We're actually a pretty amazing wild space for bats. We have 3 species that fly through our park, and have done night walks before where we track them. And I sort of nerd out on it. It's really kind of fun. So that it's an example of where we were stronger being part of the hands-on body, that they had folks who could go up there and pack up all this amazing equipment and help us be able to move really, really quickly to take on that new initiative. I gave you some examples of grants that we've received over the last couple of years. We received our first capital grant ever as a nonprofit, 10 years as a nonprofit. And that was, of course, really exciting. And also several Unity grants where we are funding programs across the organization. So being able to take science concepts into schools and bringing outreach programs and field trips and distance learning from across both hands-on and Leslie together. So, for example, we have a proposal right now we're waiting to hear back on, where we're supporting a few grades in Ypsilanti Public Schools, and they'll receive an outreach from hands-on. They'll come to a field trip at Leslie. They'll have a distance learning program through hands-on, and then a field trip to hands-on. And over the course of the year, those students have this reinforcement of a scientific concept. So by the end of the year, after more than just 1 touch point, they have 4 touch points. They really understand the principle, whether it's motion or energy in our world. And it feels like a much more substantial relationship with that grade and with that classroom. The MOU in front of you is something that we've worked on with city staff and with attorneys to be able to take our current contract and finish our merger with hands-on. Right now, our financials are separate. We have 2 separate QuickBooks in our operation, which means 2 separate audits, which is about a $20,000 expense as opposed to a $10,000 expense. And the management of 2 QuickBooks is complicated at best. To be able to bring our financials together, we need to be able to have hands-on serve as our proxy, so to speak, for Leslie. And to do that, we have to have something in writing. The MOU outlines our ability to have hands-on function as Leslie, almost doing business as Leslie for the contract while we finish the conversation with the city to rewrite the city contract. The MOU allows us to move forward in bringing our financials together under 1 QuickBooks and having 1 audit, and that's a really big deal for us. Uncomplicates a lot of things. There's a lot of inner billing and inner invoicing right now within our organization. I welcome any questions.
Stephen?
As I understand it, the programming, the activities, and all of the awesome things that are already taking place are continuing and growing and expanding.
Yes.
And the purpose of what we need to do is to sort of make sure we're not in the way so that the merger can complete. Is that-
You know, what we're trying to do is really honor what the basis of the contract with the city,
Right.
And doing everything as officially as possible. And so we haven't done this final piece of the merger because the contract's pretty clear that we couldn't just assign it to hands-on.
Right.
So we're trying to go through the right process.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, from the outset, when kind of the partnership between hands-on and Leslie was proposed, you know, what has been very important is to make sure that we keep the Leslie, I suppose, the brand, you know, for lack of a better term, really, because it is a unique amenity. And I think throughout, you know, the last couple of years as the transition has happened, that's really been actually done very well. So
Thank you.
support it completely, staff do.
Yeah, our staff and board truly feel it's important to honor both Eugene and Emily Leslie. We talk a lot about how we honor both of their legacies through our work, and we would never want to lose sight of that.
Other questions, comments?
I'd like to motion to approve.
Second. Further discussion? Any more questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Well, that's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Susan.
Item H, commission can propose business. We've got appointments and elections. Let's do the appointment first. I, as chair, would like to nominate Bob as, what's the official name?
I believe it's the budget officer, but let me check, that might not be right.
We call it the budget honcho,
You can certainly call it that, yes.
the budget godfather.
Here we go. It would be the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay.
I would recommend Bob be appointed as the chair of the
Budget and Finance Committee.
Budget and Finance Committee. That requires a majority vote. Is there anyone else interested in the job? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? You voted for yourself, Bob?
Yeah, I voted for
Awesome.
As opposed to the opposition candidate that emerged.
It's a sign of business. All right, annual officer elections.
Just your ballot here, can you share?
That's the other ballot. I've done this for a few years. I'd like to do it for,
Another paper if you did.
I'd like to do it for one last year. I know Paige would like to continue to serve as vice chair, although I'm sure that it wouldn't take much for both of us to sit down if anyone else is truly interested in it.
I think I heard you guys volunteer just now.
So I guess that's a ballot of two. So now we have to actually vote on the paper?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why the bylaw is what it is, but it is at
Can we
yours.
vote for the entire slate on one?
Yes,
ballot?
sure.
You may indeed.
I guess you could, if there's only one.
Do we have to put names or just yes?
You have, no, it's got to be on paper apparently. I think you have to vote for chair and vice chair
No,
separately.
no, I'm asking, do we have to put names or can we just write yes?
I guess that's right.
Yes would suffice, I believe.
It's your no hanging chad, as long as it's
No
clear who
hanging
you're voting
chad.
for.
Well, that's
Hand mine down to the
I
principal,
will do
please.
it.
a nail biter.
Pass this down, there you go.
Should have 3 coming back from there. Looks legitimate.
These things accounted for over here.
I don't want to handle any ballots.
That's the 2.
As we anxiously await the result.
I'm in
On
demand
pins
of
and
recount.
needles.
I just have to look at them all.
But Ross Perot? Wow.
Crossbow.
So after the
What'd you say?
results are counted, the chair is David Santa Croce with 6 votes, and the vice chair is Paige Morrissey, 6 votes, unanimous.
Thank you for your
So
continued,
much glory.
so much glory, Bob.
Very exciting.
Makes it harder to skip a meeting, basically. All right, so, item I, more important work. Report from the Parks and Rec manager. Colin?
Yeah, I have a handful of things to update you on today. Last night was a council meeting that went very late, but on the council meeting was the lease for the Fuller parking lot. That was passed 1 year with 1 administrative renewal year. So that has moved on and won't be coming back to us this year, so that's good news. We had on the weekend, we had the trick or treat paddle at Gallup Park on Sunday. We had 625 people came out to rent boats. We had 100 volunteers. It was a really, really super day. So, and it is, I would say it's the kind of event that until we've had volunteers to the, I suppose, the level that we have the last couple of years, these are events that in the past we wouldn't have really been able to run because we just don't have that staffing level to, you know, to do something like that. Have a couple special events coming up. On October 27th, 1 o'clock to 2:30, there's a Halloween skate at Vets, and you will get a prize awarded for the best costume. We also have on October 27th, from noon to 2 at the Farmers Market, the Halloween party, all sorts of games and treats, and again, the costumes are encouraged.
What date was that?
October 27th, which is Saturday. Almost sure, yeah, it's Saturday. Let's see, I had a couple other things I just can't remember. In the transmittals today, the last one is the annual report from the Land Acquisition Committee. So usually there's a presentation for that, but we're in between staff right now, so just added it into the packet for your review. And that, I believe, is everything. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Is there a report from the Recreation Advisory Committee?
Well, I actually missed the last meeting, but Colin was there. He gave a presentation about the renewal that's on the ballot. You want to say anything more about it?
If I can get my microphone to turn on. Yeah, I thought it was good, actually, to go to the meeting. There were quite a few questions just about the millage and understanding kind of ways in which the parks support Rec and Ed. So it's always good just to have that information sharing, so.
If I can add one more thing. Tomorrow is the ribbon cutting for the Freeman Environmental Education Center. Some of you know that Freeman School, which is over by Dixboro, was rented. It was closed in the 1986 reorganization to the public schools, and it was rented to, I think it was Go Like the Wind Montessori, so definitely to a Montessori. And last year, the schools took it back and are in the process of rehabbing it and taking the space forward to use as a permanent space for Ann Arbor Public Schools environmental education work. Right now, there's just some rudimentary trails, and there's lots of ideas, and there's an advisory committee, and it is several years away from what I would say is full fruition, but I'm hopeful that it can attach to eventually to some of the work that's been done on the Gallup-Mathai corridor. It's just really kind of going north from there. So if anyone didn't get an invitation and wants to come to the ribbon cutting tomorrow at 4, you should just feel free to show up.
Thank you. There are no reports from relevant commissions, committees, boards, and task force. Public commentary. Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak? Seeing none, there is no closed session. The transmittals are attached. Item O, we stand adjourned. Thank you for showing, everybody. Have a nice night.